Good morning. This is Robert Frank. It's May 28th, 2019, and we're still reading in the book It Will Never Happen to Me, and it's by claudiab05, writer, and today we'll start where we left off. We finished chapter 4, so today we will start on chapter 5, and chapter 5 is called The Child Within the Home. So I will start reading. Chapter 5. Even if the alcoholic family member is still a drinking alcoholic, other family members can change the way in which their lives are affected. It is important for the non-alcoholic parent to know life can be better for everyone provided he or she is willing to change some of his or her own behavior patterns and reinforce the basis for new behavior in the children. It is also important for the non-alcoholic parent to be willing to seek outside resources who can aid in reestablishing the necessary direction and who can offer emotional support. Seeking help from strangers may be a very difficult thing to do, but it is more difficult to make positive changes by oneself. If outside direction and support is lacking, the non-alcoholic parent should not try to carry the burden of the world on his or her own shoulders, but should be willing to let others help. In seeking outside support, it is important to find qualified professionals with knowledge and understanding of the alcoholic family system. Assistance is equally important not only for the non-alcoholic spouse, but for all the children as well. It is, it is not nearly as effective for the spouse alone or only the children alone to receive help. The entire family must be part of the recovery process. The most accessible resources are programs for the families and friends of the alcoholic offered via outpatient alcohol programs, Al-Anon, and Alateen. Typically, when a family member seeks help, the help sought after is for the alcoholic. Tell me what to do so he will get sober. Agencies will be able to offer guidelines for the alcoholic's treatment, but it's important to remember that whether or not the alcoholic gets sober, the children and the spouse have also been affected by the alcoholism, and their problems need to be addressed as well. As a non-alcoholic spouse and child are involved in Al-Anon or Alateen and or other services, the alcoholic might possibly become upset by this involvement. These family members must be encouraged to continue in their own recovery program. Naturally, the alcoholic is upset. The boat is being rocked. The non-alcoholic spouse and the children are saying, "We are seeking help because we hurt as a result of your alcoholism. You can get help too if you want, but we need and want help for ourselves regardless of what you do." Expect the alcoholic person to be threatened. He or she is scared, is feeling guilty and confused. Remember, the truth can only be dealt with when it has been acknowledged. The family is now acknowledging a problem exists and disclosing that they are feeling hurt because of it. In most cases, when the alcoholic is faced with the knowledge that family members are seeking outside help, he or she will express verbal anger and then become very sullen and or passive. Physical violence is not a likely outcome of the alcoholics knowing the spouse is seeking help unless physical violence has been a past pattern. If violence is a pattern in the household, it is extremely important for the spouse to remove herself or himself and the children from the violent situation and to continue seeking professional help. If the spouse feels it is safe to do so, the alcoholic should be told why the family needs to leave, because they plan to continue with their program and will not live in the home where they are physically threatened or hurt. These intentions should only be expressed by the non-alcoholic. When there is a reason to believe that no further harm will come to any family member, the family's safety should always be the primary concern. See section on violence for further information. Again, remember, violence is only apt to occur if it is an already established pattern, and seeking professional help can only benefit the family. Guidelines for the non-alcoholic spouse. It is necessary for children to understand as much about alcoholism as possible. You, the non-alcoholic parent, along with outside qualified help, should explain and discuss alcoholism with your children. Concepts which need to be discussed with the children include disease concern or disease concept. It is advisable to ask your children what they think alcoholism is and what traits constitute an alcoholic. Children have undoubtedly heard the word alcoholic from a friend or another family member. So often the word is used judgmentally and negatively, and it is important for you to explain alcoholism as well as to explain why it is necessary for you to discuss the subject. It is vital they understand that the alcoholic family member is sick and suffering from a disease. They should be helped to dispel the misconception that alcoholic is a bad person. When they are made to understand that the alcoholic is a person who cannot stop drinking without help because he or she is physically and psychologically addicted to the drug, alcohol, you are beginning to help them view their alcoholic parent in a different light. They need to understand that alcoholism is evident in people who can no longer predict their behavior when drinking, who cannot control their drinking and whose drinking is causing problems in their life. And then I will show a little cartoon in here that helps illustrate that fact. The person really isn't bad. The person is really good inside. And then if I get a little bit closer, you can see the picture of the alcoholic, bad on the outside, good on the inside. Science, excuse me, science has not yet discovered why some people become alcoholic and others do not. Nor can we determine alcoholism by the amount a person drinks. Children need not question or attempt to determine why their parents become alcoholic. Many qualified researchers are probing this question for us. But children do need to understand alcoholism is a disease. It is not a problem of lack of self-control. Alcoholism is not a disease caused by a germ or virus, or as are many other diseases, but it is an illness nonetheless. People do not choose to become alcoholics, and all the willpower in the world will not cure alcoholism. The disease makes alcoholics unable to control their drinking and their lives. You and your children, first of all, need to accept that what is occurring in your family is the result of the disease of alcoholism. Then proceed with your recovery process. Telling children they are more prone to become alcoholic because they are the children of alcoholics won't prevent them from developing alcoholism themselves. While this information is valuable to them, it is unrealistic to expect them to choose not to drink because of knowledge alone. Unfortunately, this information will not necessarily be sufficient for them to identify drinking as a problem prior to it becoming a dependency. Parents concerned other persons and helping professionals need to recognize children of alcoholics require more than just information. They need psychological, emotional, physical, and social intervention, understanding, and support. So let's talk about blackouts. Blackouts are a period of time when the alcoholic who is conscious and drinking at the time will have no recall later about the events which occurred during that portion of time. Blackout periods of amnesia varying from minutes to several hours, or for some people, several days. Children and spouses need to understand the alcoholic is not deliberately lying about an event which occurred, but because of a psychological reaction caused by the consumption of alcohol, they experience these lapses of memory called blackouts. Some children may suspect their parent, when drinking, actually does not remember a period of time, such as a segment of what happened the night before. Other children who have no knowledge of blackouts experience an even greater sense of confusion and craziness about what happens in the home whether or not children recognize when blackouts occur in the alcoholic parent. They need to have some information and an explanation which validates their own experience and allows them to have a better understanding of their parents' denial. This validation also provides an avenue or permission to talk about it. Imagine a Friday night when Dad doesn't come home for dinner and still isn't home when everyone has gone to bed. When he finally does arrive, he makes a lot of noise and argues with the 13-year-old he meets in the hallway heading for the bathroom. Dad then proceeds to awaken Mom, and the two of them argue loudly for several hours in their bedroom. The next day, Dad only remembers he was drinking with his friends. He was late for dinner and was anticipating his wife would be angry. His recollection stops somewhere in the early evening. He doesn't remember exactly when he got home or if he had talked with anyone in the family. The two younger children show some anxiety around Dad and are apprehensive of his mood the next morning. The 13-year-old daughter acts abrupt with him. Dad doesn't know why she behaves this way and is fearful of asking, so rather than risk finding out, he treats her with a placating attitude. Mom acts like everything is okay because no one talks about the real issues. Dad's behavior the night before. The confusion, the fear, and the disappointment in a family already fragmented, more distance and misunderstandings are created. When children understand blackouts and the fact that Dad really may have no recall, they will have the option of checking Dad's memory and pointing out to him what occurred during his blackout. There will be less confusion and fear when the child realizes Dad won't be as likely to proceed with the same argument if he has no recall of that argument. Understanding blackouts makes it easier for children to cope with the parent's illness. Personality changes. Personality changes are caused by alcoholism. The Jekyll and Hyde phenomenon is certainly witnessed by family members and is not due to craziness, but is in fact caused by alcoholism. Many people believe when major personality changes occur, they are the result of mental illness. Many alcoholics have been labeled and diagnosed as schizophrenic and psychotic personalities. The biographics, these faces of Eve and Sybil, tell of a woman who exhibited major personality changes which stem from mental illness. But for the alcoholic personality, changes and drastic mood swings are due to being alcoholic. The alcohol causes the personality changes. Children need to be made aware that alcohol can cause a total change in personality, that not all people who exhibit such behavior are mentally ill. The non-alcoholic parent needs to understand the inconsistent patterns of behavior in the home resulting from the alcoholic's behavior and also stemming from their own anger and sometimes irrational responses to that behavior. They need to let the children know they are doing their best to be more predictable. So hopefully the only unpredictability will be that of the alcoholic's behavior. Acknowledging that problems in the home are a reality coupled with renewed attempts to provide consistency, will come much more stability for the children in the home. The next one, broken promises. To add stability, the non-alcoholic parent must matter-of-factly acknowledge when promises are broken by the alcoholic. It is important that children know their feelings, such as anger and disappointment, are valid. The non-alcoholic should help the children understand that the alcoholic parent doesn't break promises because of lack of caring or loving. Promises are broken because of the parent's addiction to alcohol. The preoccupation with drinking becomes the alcoholic's number one priority. All else is secondary. The next segment is called denial. Denial, when you discuss the alcoholic parent's sickness, blackouts, and personality changes, another vital area to discuss is the symptom of denial. Denial occurs when the alcoholic or the enabler pretends things are different than they really are. Denial should be presented as a phenomenon family members as well as the alcoholic experience. Let the children know certain thoughts and feelings have been denied, i.e., many times you excuse yourself and your alcoholic spouse from a social occasion because you said your spouse was working late, when in reality your spouse was drunk and you were too embarrassed to be seen with him or her. The children, too, have denied parts of themselves, i.e., their feelings. Tell them from now on, this family is going to try to be more open and honest about family affairs and about feelings. Denial only harbors resentment, distrust, and fear. Enabling. Non-alcoholic spouses need to teach their children it is okay not to make alibis or lie. In an attempt to cover up for the alcoholic parents' behavior, they need to model and support non-enabling behavior for the children. Spouses and children often lie to clearing up after, make excuses for, or bail out the alcoholic. Family members enable because they feel they must, or because they don't want to risk the unpleasant results of the alcoholic becoming upset, or because it simply makes home life easier. There are endless numbers of reasons for enabling behavior. The result of enabling is that the alcoholic does not see and does not address the consequences of drinking behavior. Enabling behavior by family members actually makes it easier for the alcoholic to continue drinking. Next subject, relapse. Relapse is an event which often occurs when the alcoholic is attempting to maintain sobriety. Relapses are not unusual in that they can and do occur in most progressive diseases. In a disease such as cancer, there are many times when the cancer appears to be at rest, if not progressing. Then it begins its process again, and the cancer victim is said to have had a relapse. When someone has pneumonia and recovers, often they suffer a relapse and return to being sick. A definition of relapse was most eloquently stated by a 9-year-old whose mother was an alcoholic. Her statement was, "A relapse is when you stop drinking and then you start again. It's like when you have a cold and you think it's gone, then you go out in the rain and your cold comes back." That was Melody, age 9. Relapse is a term which needs to be discussed if a parent attempts to get sober. Many parents ask, why worry the child, not realizing the child is already worried. The child's worries are validated and less overwhelming if this concern is discussed. However, family members need to go about their daily activities without being preoccupied with the possibility of relapse and discussing relapse. It is necessary for children to understand they don't cause relapses. Even if it appears Dad's relapse was predicated by the 16-year-old son wrecking a family car. Dad must learn to cope with such problems or uncomfortable feelings without reaching for alcohol. The alcoholic is not guilty for having the disease, but is responsible for the decision to drink again. There is much the alcoholic needs to learn to do in order to prevent relapse, and other family members can best understand this through their own involvement in a recovery program. Children are not immune from the effects of alcoholism. They live with it. They need to understand it. I believe children of all ages can comprehend these concepts pertaining to alcoholism. If the concepts are explained in language that children understand, it is important for children to have access to literature which will reinforce healthy messages. Parents need to be willing to talk openly about these concepts. Together, parents and children will have the information to understand better and cope with alcoholism and the problems the disease creates. The short, something that was written by Renee, age 16, called My Daddy. I woke up one morning and he was gone. He was gone, my daddy, and he would never be home again. He was gone, my daddy, the one who always showed his love, the one who always understood when she never would, the one who always brushed my hair, combed and put ribbons in my hair. He was the one who picked me up when I fell and skinned my knee. Oh, my daddy, my daddy. I still remember all the things he taught me, but he was gone, and I was too young to understand. She said they just didn't get along. I hardly ever saw him, my daddy, who was always there, my daddy who always cared. It seemed he just didn't have time for me. But that was also 10 years ago, and I think now I understand. But there's still one question that remains, and that's why, oh Lord, did this have to happen to me? Why did my daddy have to go and leave me all alone? She says he's an alcoholic, a person who has a disease and needs help, but can only get it if he wants it. He must admit to himself that he is sick and needs help. She knows all this now, and I do too. Now it's too late. He's already gone. He's remarried now, and he has a new little princess. who he brushes, combs, and puts ribbons in her hair. But Lord, this is so unfair. He is my daddy, and he needs help. But I feel so helpless, Lord, because it seems he still doesn't have time for me. I love my daddy, whom I hardly ever see, and even more when I think about how much he must love me, my daddy. The next segment, feelings. When working with children of alcoholics, I often address them in terms of their losses, specifically losses which occur as a result of parents not being there for them on a consistent basis. The loss of attention occurs because of the alcoholic's preoccupation with alcohol and the co-alcoholic's preoccupation with the alcoholic. When children experience a loss, they enter a grief process, one which is similar to the grief process other people experience when they lose a loved one due to death, or when a loved one becomes incapacitated because of a serious illness. The same kind of grief occurs when a person loses a limb or other part of the body. The first state of the grief process is disbelief, or denying the loss has really happened. In essence, this disbelief may be nature's way of helping a person through this stage by deadening the pain, by giving a person time to absorb the facts. Unfortunately, with alcoholism, this grief process is much slower. It occurs over a much longer time and is much more stubborn than the grief experienced due to losing someone through death. With alcoholism, as time passes and the truth becomes more evident, the victim's family begins to experience the terror. The terror of the reality that a loved one is an alcoholic. Usually, the next emotion following the terror is anger. If you, the alcoholic, really love me, how can you be like this? The family members often feel guilt. Each family member believes that in some way they are responsible. A son believes maybe if I hadn't talked back, Dad wouldn't drink so much or be so angry all the time. A wife believes if I were a better wife, my husband wouldn't be sick. A husband believes maybe if I had been home more, etc. Bargaining is practicing by family members eliciting promises from the drinker to control or stop the drinking. At other times, bargaining is self-imposed. If I behave this way, maybe mom will respond another way. For many children, the bargaining is through prayer. Please, God, keep my mom and my dad together. Don't let them fight so much. I promise I will be real good. Finally, family members feel desperation and despair. They each feel alone with the problem. They feel all these terrible things are unique in their lives, that no one else could possibly understand their pain. They despair that there are no answers or solutions to the guilt they carry. This process and these feelings are common to all persons affected by alcoholism. Families who try to run away from their feelings suffer longer. Often they never recover from their grief, and it becomes a long-lasting depression. Families who face their loss and the related feelings accept the stages of grief human beings seem to need to go through. These families will become stronger and will be able to begin growing, living full and satisfying lives. In alcoholic families, everyone suffers and everyone suffers very much alone. Children often suffer from loneliness, fear, anger, and a multitude of other feelings which they have no way of understanding. Furthermore, they do not have the ability to express this lack of understanding. I believe a child can survive a family crisis as long as he or she is told the truth and allowed to share the natural sequence of feelings people experience when they suffer. It is important for the non-alcoholic to talk with the children about these feelings and explain that these feelings are perfectly normal. Although the non-alcoholic may help the child understand alcoholism, intellectual understanding will not erase the multitudes of intense feelings they experience. Children need to be able to say, I was so embarrassed. I know she is sick, but she still embarrasses me and it hurts. Or I'm sad because mom is like she is, but I'm also really angry and I don't understand why she won't go for help. All of these feelings are valid. Children cannot understand and feel at the same time. They need to know others will validate and listen to their feelings. The non-alcoholic parent, along with outside resources, can fill this necessary validating role. Crying. Crying is a natural release for emotion. Children and spouses both need to cry. Crying is difficult for many people, but people in alcoholic homes usually do one of two things. One, they learn how not to cry. Or two, they cry alone, very silently. Before a child can cry and feel okay about it, the child needs to be given healthy messages regarding crying. It's okay to cry. It's normal. It will make you feel better. Other messages such as boys don't cry, boys don't cry, shouldn't cry, don't be a crybaby, need to be countered. Children also need models who can demonstrate that crying is not weak or shameful. They need you, the sober parent, to be honest about yourself. You may have to confide in the children that you have been pretending you don't hurt. You may have to tell them you really don't hurt, and at times you too cry. Tell them you feel awkward about sharing this secret with them, but when you do share, you feel closer to them and you feel better. Aside from giving permission to cry, you need to be supportive of their sharing their feelings with others. Ask your children who they could tell about the times when they cry, who they who do they trust enough to confide in? Who in the family do they trust to ask for comfort at such times? This can be a very valuable family discussion. I once worked with a brother and sister, 6 years old, and Chuck and his 9-year-old sister, Melanie. Chuck was very open about not trusting his mother and about his helplessness regarding her drinking. He talked about worrying a lot, and all at times he cried when he talked. Melody would tell him to shut up. She would talk louder when he was speaking and would call him a crybaby. She was prepared to do just about anything she could to keep Chuck from talking and showing his feelings. Though there was only 3 years difference in their ages, Chuck and Melody were in different stages of denial. It is important for a parent to be aware of their varying stages of denial among children and how children interfere with or are supportive of each other's expressions of feelings. One child may be more open to expression of tears while another is obviously angry. Still another child appears simply to be non-feeling. All children need to have access to all of their feelings and have healthy avenues of expression. Subject fearful. Fear is a natural emotion all children experience. It is unfortunately normal for a child to be acutely fearful in an alcoholic home. Whether or not children express specific fears, parents, family, and friends need to validate that. At times, it is quite reasonable to be afraid. Many times, nothing can be done about feelings of such as fear, other than helping children talk about them. Expressing feelings develops a closeness between a parent and child, and it is helpful in decreasing the child's or children's feelings of being overwhelmed by emotions they are keeping inside. Emotions become so much more powerful when they are not outwardly expressed. Secrets can cause a great deal more pain than is necessary. A parent's drinking results in a lot of tension in the home, and it is important to approach children's individuality and acknowledge each of their fears. The non alcoholic parent should tell them that alcoholism causes people to act in ways which are scary. Caution, don't ask them if they are okay. They hear that as a leading question, which tells them you want them to say yes. Instead, ask them how they feel about the family situation and listen and validate their feelings. Another positive result of taking or talking about feelings is that problems can be solved. Suppose this coming Friday, Sally has an important mother-daughter function, and Mom's attendance is dependent on whether or not she drinks that day. Though Sally has not approached her father with an expression of fear, the father can approach Sally saying, I know you function, I know your function is on Friday, and I'm sure it is important to you. Your mother told me about it herself last night. You'll probably be concerned as to whether or not she'll really attend. At that point, the parent should stop and listen. Give Sally a chance to respond. It is very important and appropriate to problem solve with her. It's up to the sober parent to engage Sally in mutual problem solving. Have you thought about what you'll do if she is drinking then? Once again, listen. Then other possibilities should she need such guidance. Certainly, the possibilities include 1, Sally would not go. 2, she would go alone. And 3, she would ask another person to attend in lieu of her mother. Or 4, she would go with a friend and her friend's mother. It is important Sally not isolate herself as a result of her mother's drinking, and that she continue with her plans as close to the original idea as possible. It is healthy to encourage the child to attend the function and to use an alternative support system. Problem solving is more likely to occur when feelings are discussed, both before and after an event, which could be marred due to someone's drinking. Anger. Anger is a normal feeling. Everyone experiences it. For the majority of children of alcoholics, I found this to be the feeling they were most excited to share. It is extremely important for children to become aware of their frustrations and angers, and then find ways to express these frustrations. Children's anger is only pragmatic when has been stored and when appropriate ways of expression have not been introduced to the children. Parents need to assess their own ability to identify and express feelings and embark on healthy ways of expressing those feelings as they teach them to their children. Parents should ask themselves, what do I do with my anger? What do my children do? Whether or not you think you know, ask them anyway. Ask them what happens when family members get angry. In doing this, you are asking them how they perceive the way anger is expressed at home. Their responses will guide you in determining what needs to be addressed, i.e., when a 9-year-old Mike was asked what people in his family do with anger, he said, Dad leaves the house, Mom drinks, Tommy goes outside. I'm not really angry. Mike was a very overweight young boy, and his description demonstrated how he copied his mother's pattern for coping with anger, while his brother coped with his father's pattern. Two family members leave their anger behind, and to drink or eat at it, none of them found a healthy way of coping with anger. Children need to know their anger will not cause them to lose their parents' love. For so many people, expressing anger has come to mean if I show you I'm angry with you, you will withdraw your love. Children need to know what limits are placed on the expression of anger and what is perceived by others as appropriate responses to situations. Children need to know their hurts and angers are very important and should not be discounted. Many times, children discount problems in their own lives because they believe problems taking place within the family structure take precedent over any personal conflicts occurring outside the home. Who am I to talk about how angry I became at school today? There is already enough tension at home. The messages learned are: one, what happened to me at school is not important. Two, the feelings I have throughout the day at school are not important. Three, I'm not important. It bears repeating. Non-alcoholic parents raising children in a drinking alcoholic environment need outside resources to help. These outside resources, i.e., a school counselor or an Alateen meeting, can help validate the expression of feelings, whether big or small. And that's going to be it for the day. We basically have run out of time. So on Thursday, we'll come back and we will start with the subject of guilt. And we'll go from there. So other than that, I would say that it has been a very rainy day, and we will move on, like I said, to Thursday, and we will continue in this book, and we will start with the subject of guilt. I want to thank you all very much for coming, and I'll see you on Thursday. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and have a great and wonderful day, and I will pray for your day as well. Bye-bye.